What does Pan-Africanism mean to you in particular?
Pan-Africanism for me is just a celebration of so many different cultures, so many different cultures, so many different communities. Each African country I've been to is distinctly different. It's so rich. And what I loved, and this is what I got from Africa, and especially a lot of the filmmakers there, is they are so creative in getting their product out there. You know, in the West, we're like, oh my God, someone needs to help us. You know, someone needs to commission my show. Like, poor me, why is my show not happening? In like Nigeria, for example, they're like, okay, I'm going to make it. You know, I've got a creative vision. I'm going to put it on screen. Whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. And I think we needed to, because we were going down that, oh my God, you know, feeling sorry for ourselves. But when we met the African filmmakers on the continent, we were just so inspired to actually do rather than to talk about it.
All right, you guys, let's get into first.
There is a movement promoting our stories, and many of us grew up with a strong craving for images we can relate to. Production teams, writers, creative heads have come together to tell stories, and this podcast is their voice. The themes covered are very relevant to the Black community, and anyone concerned by the social and racial injustices that are in place to stifle this voice. The Pan-African voice is not easily heard, and here we talk about our movies, that film or doc which you heard about but didn't get to see. What was the story? Where can I watch it? It now has a voice. Tune in. We walk you through these stories and interview the filmmakers. Welcome. Karibu sana. Karibu sana.
And starting right on the lens. Ready? And action.
PanAfricanFilm.com. PanAfricanFilm.com. Visit us on the site to learn more about the Pan-African Screenwriters Retreat this August 18th through 22nd on St. Helena Island. Submit your story and join us for a breather and dive into your script with 4 excellent mentors.
Yeah, for everybody who's joined us on the podcast, in this episode, we meet Andrew Osayemi, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but correct me along the way. So you're the CEO of MTA Productions and the creator of Meet the Adebanjos. I was just telling Andrew earlier, it's like a household staple for us here, even in the US. But it's basically a pioneering 2012 already, like it's quite aged sitcom following the lives and hilarious times of like an immigrant British Nigerian family that's living in London, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. You go ahead. Like, I mean, I'm like, wow, what show is this? Who created this show? You make it sound a lot more interesting than I would.
Really? That's what it is, though. Like, literally, no?
Yeah, it is. It's like basically it's a cultural clash and a generational clash. You know, you've got the parents who are immigrants, came from Nigeria to the UK. You know, in the pursuit of a good life, you know, everyone can relate to that. And then they have their kids who are born in their adopted home, you know, in the UK, and they're completely different, right? They have different mindset, different interests, and, you know, the whole show centers around like, yeah, who wins? Like, you know, does the culture of the parent win? Does the culture of the adopted line win? And how can you look after kids when you come from 2 different cultures? So that cultural clash. And you have all these eccentric characters in the mix as well.
Meet Bayo, your typical hard-working dad. He came to London from Africa 20 years ago.
No more money problem. I now have an extra job working security.
Bayo, make yourself useful.
Didn't I bring you to London?
He's a family man with a mission to instill old-fashioned African values on his British household.
You will be a big money accountant.
I know pieces of yam that can get better results than this. Balance. You don't know your father? I am a master poet. Freestyle. Master Ed.
But what must he do to win them over?
This time I'm certain he's going to surprise me.
Ta-da!
You brought me funeral flowers on our anniversary.
Looks like it's working.
Yeah, you've got very relatable characters, as you were saying, and they overlap like probably across immigrant communities, but it's definitely like, you know, laugh out loud family comedy which is very inclusive of the African diaspora. And, you know, we were just talking earlier about kind of the TV distribution channels and journey that you had to navigate. Could you, you know, give us a little intro, first of all, and welcome to the podcast, Andrew. You know, kind of tell us about your career, your background, and, you know, honing in on the award-winning sitcom.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It all starts with having a dream. All starts with having a dream, you know, and I know it sounds cheesy and cliche, but you could either be a doer or you could just complain and say, you know, why are there people on TV that doesn't look like me? Or why is my story not being told? And I was one of the complainers for many years. So working in like, you know, corporate America, corporate, you know, UK, as a trader working in a financial company, I was one of those people that said, you know, why is there no stories about my upbringing? You know, my parents are immigrants. Like, there was so much comedy, so much laughter in our household, despite not having much. Why is there not much? So, you know, you complain and you complain and you complain. And sometimes in life, you have to get pushed. Sometimes, you know, we all feel like we're brave, that we're going to jump and do new things, but sometimes you have to get pushed. And my time when I got pushed is when I got made redundant. So 5 years working in finance, out of the blue, I got made redundant. And then I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? My cousin, she's a TV producer. And again, she was like me, complaining, oh, why is there not these shows on TV? And then one day we met up. And instead of us saying why, we said, okay, how could we make something happen? Traditionally in TV, you need to go to a gatekeeper. Someone needs to help your show get commissioned. You know, it needs to go through all the correct channels. But the best thing about my background was because I didn't come from TV, I said, why don't we just shoot this and make this ourselves? And this was way before people were doing stuff, you know, on YouTube, for example. It was just, okay, why don't we just do it and see what happens? And that was the effort and the birth of Meet Adebanjos. It was created out of like, you know, that independent guerrilla mindset of we're going to make stuff happen. We're going to see if people like it. And if people do like it, we'll continue making it and we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how we make money, how we get investors. We'll figure it out. But if we do our pilot and people like it, we will continue. We did a pilot. People loved it. And, you know, the rest is history.
Nice. It really is history. And earlier on, we were just talking about like the writing process, which was just, I was like mind blowing as a writer myself. But before we jump into that labyrinth of how you even wrote it, why filmmaking? Like, how did that idea come about? Like, what inspires you about, you know, this profession in particular? You mentioned like there not being enough representation, but like,
I'm going to be completely honest. I mean, it wasn't even about, for me, TV, and they say this old adage around, be careful of restricting your child from having something because they crave to have that thing you restrict. So I grew up in a very religious household, so there was no TV in my house, right? So there was no TV until probably I was like 19. Like there was no TV allowed in the house. Like the TV was called the devil's box. Out of that box comes, you know, like wickedness, evilness, all of that stuff. So my mum and dad, you know, very religious, said, you're not allowed to watch TV. But, you know, the more you restrict someone from doing stuff, you know, so when I would go around to my friend's house, like, you know, TV for them was like, that's something in the background. For me, I was like, oh my God, I get the chance to watch TV. So I always knew one day I wanted to do something. I didn't know I want to create something, but I always knew one day, like, you know, I really loved this genre because I was not allowed to have it, you know. So I knew one day I would do something.
Do you know what time it is?
Do you know what time it is?
I said, do you know what time it is?
Oh no, not Koboko time.
That's right, Koboko time.
Fetch me my Koboko. Balance. Balance.
You this boy, you are really growing wings.
Look, Dad,
you mean you had the effrontery to enter into my room?
But Dad, it's just...
Then shut up!
My name is Toby, and I'm so cool. My parents can't tell me to
go to school.
Is this the nonsense that you can't study?
Mom, now you're taking liberties. How dare you raise your voice at me?
My friend, this is work. Go upstairs and change into a shirt and tie.
I ain't got a smart shirt and tie.
I ain't. Gladly, can you hear his English? Balance. Talking about balance.
Right. So in particular, the sitcom, like the family style, you crave.
Oh man, absolutely. I mean, so I remember going, and I used to tell my friends, because obviously I didn't have a TV. I would say, okay, record. It was Moesha, Smart Guy. We used to watch like the Fresh Prince. Like, oh, it was the same. Like, and that's why sometimes when people tell me, oh, we've watched Meet the Adebanjos like 20 times. Like, first of all, I'm like, well, how would you watch it? But then I go back to when I was young. We used to watch the same VHS tape, the same show, memorize the lines. So yeah, I loved old school sitcoms.
Yeah.
And especially the black ones that represented like a black family. Like I saw myself on TV. Yeah, I loved it. And I just, you know what? I never knew that's what I was going to do, if I'm going to be completely honest. But now when you look back, I could see where the genesis definitely came from.
That's amazing. Can you, for the audience again, elaborate a little bit on the, the income generating potential of filmmaking, as well as like some of the stereotypes and barriers to entry, which have historically excluded immigrant families from sharing perspective, kind of like what you created with the Adebanjos, like it being such a groundbreaking project, like the main reasons why, so groundbreaking.
So I'm going to break the misconception of that it's just hard for underrepresented groups to get on TV. It's hard for everybody.
Right.
It's hard. Like probably TV is the hardest genre to enter, broadcast TV on a TV station. And the main reason, different from film, you can go out and make stuff, right? No one needs to tell you, whether you can make it or not, you can make a film. With TV, the channels are controlled, right? For you to get on the channels, someone needs to say yes. I mean, I remember going to conferences and I would meet people, black, white, Indian, Hispanic, all desperately trying to get into TV, and all the commissions. And commissions is basically when your show is greenlit or funded by the studio, will go into the same people, right? And everyone was just like, how do I get? And it's a small list of people. So TV is so hard. So what we did is and they do this a lot in emerging markets, in Africa and India. They actually they produce their own stuff first and then they sell it. So we decided, okay, there's hundreds of TV stations around the world. Let's produce our show and then we'll go around to the smaller networks and sell it to them one by one. First season, we thought, hundreds will buy it, maybe 4 or 5 did. So it took a long time, but by the time we were able to build, for example, I remember selling the show to the public broadcaster of South Africa, for example, and it just blew up. I remember we sold it to the public broadcaster of Nigeria. So in your regular, you just turn on the TV, no cable, it was on, and it just blew up because everyone could watch it, right? So we were very focused on trying to get on into countries that we could reach as many people as possible, because once people like stuff, the momentum builds, and then you're able to get, sponsorship, all of that stuff. So it takes a while, but it is an investment. So we did have to raise money from investors to help us in that journey.
Yeah, and I also started filmmaking, kind of in the early 2000s, where guerrilla filmmaking was a thing, an actual thing. I remember doing a workshop in Kenya on it, literally. So this is kind of like guerrilla producing. You were in London and targeted intentionally African public broadcasting as a way to build your initial momentum, and then reach out to bigger audiences, and now even on streaming on Netflix and things like that. So that's why I kind of felt this and labeled it as a pioneering sitcom, within the community. It's very Pan-African. It's just kind of guerrilla style production that was just funny. It just really worked. But also for me was a representation of how it's very much needed. So can you describe like the importance of representation, like within marginalized communities, and the impact comedy can have and break like down some of those discriminatory practices?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And it's something, like now I've got two kids, I've got a son and a daughter. And I really believe, and I'm going to sound cheesy, that words are so important. So I hate the word. So the one word I hate is marginalized. Like, who says I'm marginalized? Someone says to me, what's another word someone says to me? They said, I come from was it like not a lower socioeconomic, but undeserved, or I'm like, who says that? Like, these are labels people put on. I'm not a minority. Someone says you're a minority. Says who? Like, who comes with these words? But the only reason I was able to think like that was because I watched shows like Moesha, like what's that show? Is it Hang Time with Mr. Cooper or Park?
Hanging with Mr. Cooper,
yeah, just like Fresh Prince. Because I saw
he's
people and I saw that they weren't talking about how they were inferior, and that's the power. Like, when I speak with my son, when with the shows that we try and watch, we're trying to watch shows that, like, yeah, you like, just spread that message. You can be who you want to be, and because it does hold us back, because especially like for us content creators, if we always think, our shows are not worthy or not as worth it, like we'll stop producing. And I see so many producers almost, they go through stages of optimism, then they just get like almost like just get depressed because they feel like they're fighting through a brick wall. Whereas we went where we were loved, right? We went to African communities, African countries. And like some of my actors, they can't walk through South Africa or Uganda without being mobbed, right? Go where you're loved, don't go where you have to be begging anyone. So, anyone that I would send it to and said, no, this doesn't represent us. This is a niche show.
Yeah.
I would say, okay, that's great for you guys. But for us, we find broadcasters who said, yes, this is something that we wanted to rock with. So, yeah. So I guess it's just a mindset shift that we had to go through ourselves.
Yeah. And I think that's really why I just so excited to have you on the Pan-African Film podcast, because of that journey. And then the classic question just kind of segues right into it is, what we ask all our guests is, what does Pan-Africanism mean to you in particular?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really know. Do you know what? And why I would say that is because, and again, I really thank God for this show, because before I made this show, I hadn't even visited one African country. It was so bad. Like, my eyes were so closed. I knew South London and that was it. Not even the whole of London. All I knew was South London, my little area. Yeah, and that was it, right? So that was all I knew. But this show, again, because I had to go find my audience, I went to Rwanda, I went to Uganda, I've been to South Africa, I've been to Ghana, I've been to Nigeria, I've been to Kenya, like loads of different. I've been to Tanzania, like loads of different places across Africa. So, like Pan-Africanism for me is just a celebration of so many different cultures, so many different communities. Each African country I've been to is distinctly different. It's so rich. And what I loved, and this is what I got from Africa, and especially a lot of the filmmakers there, is they are so creative in getting their product out there. In the West, we're like, oh my God, someone needs to help us. Someone needs to commission my show. Like, poor me, why is my show not happening? In like Nigeria, for example, they're like, okay, I'm going to make it. I've got a creative vision. I'm going to put it on screen. Whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. And I think we needed to, because we were going down that, oh my God, feeling sorry for ourselves. But when we met the African filmmakers on the continent, we were just so inspired to actually do rather than to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a great perspective, obviously, coming from kind of the center, I guess, within Europe. where you're coming from in terms of your inspiration, I guess, from the African American community, and then your touring of Africa as very relatable, I think, to the bigger Pan-African community at large. Thank you for sharing your journey. And can you tell me, like, again, coming from this unique perspective, what your thoughts are on like community engagement and just inclusivity in the decision making when it comes to filmmaking? You know, why do you think Africans or Pan-Africans have been excluded from these type of discussions in the past?
It's a good question. I mean, to be honest, I don't think Africans really care. And this is something which is quite interesting, right? So you have different, like, if I look at my mum and my aunts, and they watch a lot of Nollywood, they don't care, like, whether or not, you know, it's accepted or someone says it should happen. As long as it makes them laugh and it's the stuff that they like and they can relate to, they will enjoy. And that's what I've realized about content. Content finds itself to the people who want it, right? You look at TikTok, you look at Instagram, you look at, you know, YouTube now. There's so many avenues for you to get your content out there and you will find an audience, you know. So that big mass, everyone sit down and watch it on TV audience, I don't think that exists anymore.
Fragmented.
You know, it's becoming so fragmented, like you say. So I think as long as you find your niche, you know, I think the mistake people make, and we made the same mistake, is trying to go after everybody.
Like lean into your audience.
Lean into your audience.
Lean into the love. I'm loving this. And
and it's okay. It's okay.
And it's okay.
It's okay if only 50,000 people like your stuff. That's fine. That's fine. It's better to impact. One thing I've realized, it's better to make 50,000 people love you than try and find the love of a million people who don't want anything to do with you, right? And I think your story will be so much richer, your characters, because obviously what happens, and as you know, when you're trying to make characters appeal to people who do not understand your culture and relate to it, you strip away the essence of that character. Before you know it, that character could be anybody. It's not unique. And that's what we were very conscious of trying not to do.
Right.
Meet Adebanjos, you know, we wanted each character have its own unique voice. That only that people who know the culture can relate.
Like, if you know, you know.
Exactly.
They do have that. They really do have that. And before we lose track and, like, you know, run out of time, I did want to bring it back to what we were discussing earlier, which is a little off script, but like how you got to writing it, because the characters are just so spot on and everyone's so invested in them, right?
So do you know what? Again, this is what I said. Like, so again, I didn't come from a writing background. I've never written a screenplay or anything in my life. Never written. My co-producer, she's never really written before. So we were green. So what do you do when you've never written anything before? You hire writers, right? So we hired writers in the beginning. Like we said, this is our concept, this is our vision. Please go away and write something. And what they came back with, we're like, we can't see these characters. These are not the characters. And then we were like, okay, what do we do? Does our dream stop there? And we decided, you know what? Let's have a go at this, right? But we didn't know, so we took a 2-day comedy course. Where we learned the rules of how to write a sitcom, you know, different tropes, you know, and that's why when people watch shows, it's very formulaic. You know, we don't take much risk because this is what we were taught. We were taught, you know, there's an act one, you kind of set it up, in the middle, stuff happens, makes things get worse. But then by the end, you're back to happy families. That's kind of how we were taught. But when it came to dialogue, me and Deborah, my co-creator, had never written a script in our life. So we didn't even know how to write on Final Draft or anything like that. So we hired a script typist, and essentially we would spend time on the scene outline. So the episode outline. So it could be like scene 1, dad comes home from work and finds that the electricity is cut. That would be scene 1. So Deborah would say, okay, Andrew, you're going to be the dad. I would say, Deborah, you're going to be the mum, Mrs. Adebanjo. Okay, let's act out. If your mum came and my dad, what would be the conversation? So we would just act it out, and the script typist will be in the corner. We type in the dialogue, and then that would be the scene 1, done. Then we move on to scene 2. Like in comes Sade, comes home from school, but, the dad finds out that she's been actually skipping school and going to her friend's house. They say, okay, you play Sade, the daughter, I play the dad. What would you do? How would that conversation go? And they will type it up. And I always tell people it's easier to edit a first draft than to write a first draft. So the dialogue got the first draft on the paper, and then once we had that first draft on the paper, then we said, we need to make that more funny. No, that's there, and that's there. And that's kind of how we would construct a script, like one level and then one layer and then one layer. And then by the time we came ready to shoot, and it could literally be, seconds until we're ready to shoot. We're still changing, like, okay, that joke, cool. And then we would make it happen. So it was a really collaborative, me and Deborah, sitting down and just writing episodes.
Wow, that's super unique, but it makes a lot of sense. With sitcoms, the dialogue is so key. So there's a lot of dialogue, like not a lot of screen settings or like scene changes. So the dialogue is totally key. It's almost like theatrical, like. Yeah.
And also what was quite interesting, what we discovered very early on, and I think I saw this a lot from probably Moesha. So in Moesha, there's 2 relationships going on. There's a relationship with the dad and his daughter, and it's like the coming of age. Like, what do you do? Your daughter's coming of age, right? Like, how do you feel as your daughter's coming out of age? And then you have the relationship between the dad and the mum, where, the kids are getting older now, like more free time, there's the pressures. So we always really wanted to have the heart of showing the representation of what is it like in a normal relationship? Like the parents love each other, but, they get stressed and angry. So we always wanted to make sure that despite anything that happened, we would show that love conquers all almost, right? So parents love each other. Kids love the interaction with the parents, and they figure it out. They have different disagreements, but at the end of every episode, like, they find like their peace and they're back to happy families, and kind of try to replicate life. I think Pan-Africanism is around parents and families trying to just do their best despite loads of challenges, and finding time to laugh. Because Africans love to laugh. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people forget that part of our stories, that despite all the pain, despite all the struggles, a lot of times we're sitting at home having a laugh.
Yeah. I mean, come on, like Africans love to laugh and to party, because African parties, like, it doesn't matter whether you have no money or you have all the money in the world. Everyone goes dressed up looking like $1 million.
Yeah.
They love to laugh and they love to party.
That's right. That's so true. Can you tell us a little about the sitcom's budgets and just kind of where you're at with MTA Productions in general? Just
so the sitcoms, when I talk about guerrilla, it was very, very guerrilla. And that's why sometimes, someone will come up to me and say, oh man, I really wanted to like your show, but it's not as well produced as like Friends or like even My Wife and Kids, for example. And I'm like, our budget was so small. I mean, each episode probably cost us the most, even when times were good, maybe like $25,000. No, $20,000 an episode was the most our episodes ever cost. And when you look at that compared to like broadcast TV, like in the UK for a broadcast sitcom, minimum is $500,000 an episode. Like we had to shoot in like abandoned warehouses. Like we couldn't afford to shoot in a studio, so we would have to find a warehouse that is going bust and build all our sets in there very quickly, film and shoot, and then leave before the warehouse got knocked down or taken over and stuff like that. Yeah, it was it was tough. I remember sometimes the electricity would just go in the studio and we're like, oh my God, what do we do? How do we turn the electricity back on? But it's a labor of love, and that's why I think, and that's why we're happy we found our niche audience where they will, because they're so in love with the characters. Like even if the production is, is slapstick, is not a Hollywood production, they let it go because they're like, we know what the show came from, what it took to make the show.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I think, like I said earlier, the character is just so relatable, and that's who we fall in love with. Like, we know that, we look at the stage and like we're like, okay, we're in for a laugh, and that's what we're in for over and over. As I was telling Andrew, it's just easily repeated. What is it? 3 seasons?
Yeah, 3 seasons. And again, that's why, because like people are like, why is your first season 7 episodes and then your next season's 20 something episodes and your next, I'm like, we did as much as the money could stretch, right? So if it stretched to 7, we made 7. If it stretched to 24,
strategy to start off with.
Yeah, we made it stretch. But it goes, I mean, again, and this is what my message to everyone to be listening is just around, sometimes in life, you figure it out as you go along. It's not, there's no blueprint sometimes, but, at least all you want to do is at least be able to say to yourself when you look back at your life that I tried to make it happen. Was it as polished as people wanted things to be? Maybe not, but at least I did. And that's all you want to do, right? And at least to have that chance to resonate with people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is, what's in the pipeline for MTA Productions? Do you want to talk about, anything you're working on for the near future? Discuss a personal fun facts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's 2 things. So the first one is obviously trying to get the show. So the show's just come off Netflix. We've got a lot of fans asking, we watch this show all the time.
Where's season 4?
Where can we see it? Yeah,
I gotta be one of them. Where's season 4? Andrew.
Do you know how many people say that? We need to figure it out. So we're not sure. Season 4, we're not sure how to do. Like, do we do a Kickstarter? Some people ask us to do a Kickstarter. Some ask us to do a movie. Just do like a movie adaptation. So we're in between, thinking of what to do next. But while we're doing that, we're going to make sure we distribute at least the seasons we have as wide and as far as possible. So all platforms, all networks, so that at least everyone can get a chance to watch the show. And then secondly is I've moved on in terms of my creative outlet. Growing up, I used to love reading books. So I've been happy. I'm privileged to write a couple books myself. My latest book really tells the story of, how I made Meet the Adebanjos and how I've shifted from different careers, so it really tells that story. So it's called The DIY Career Switch, how, you can do it yourself and almost take control of your career and how to move around. So it just shares around loads of techniques on how to switch careers. You can go from creative to corporate to creative, from something that's a dream, have a go at it. Even if you fail, you can go back into something else, not being so fixated on all or nothing. So you can do so many different things in your life. And that's the essence of the book. So yeah, the DIY Career Switch, go check it out on Amazon and all good retailers. So yeah, so that's the 2 things we're doing is what do we do next with Meet the Adebanjos, and telling my story through writing books.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing, all this really relatable stuff for the audience we have here, but also just tips for filmmakers. We love it all. Thank you for the openness and the transparency about Meet the Adebanjos. We're huge fans, and I think our audience is too. So we're excited.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Follow us at 360africa.news on Instagram and Spotify for all the podcast episodes.
Pan-African Film Podcast, and don't forget to visit PanAfricanFilm.com. That is PanAfricanFilm.com for the latest on the Pan-African Screenwriters Retreat in South Carolina, August 18th.